One of the very first things you learn about sports is the fact that Father Time has never lost a single battle. Even though there have been some players throughout history that have given him a run for his money, they still end up surrendering in the end. And the age where this usually happens depends on the sport, but for most basketball players, that's at around age 35 as your athleticism fades. But the true anomalies are the players that can still not just be playing at this age, but still be playing at an elite level, which hasn't really happened throughout NBA history. Before this season, there were only 26 instances of a player averaging 20 or more points at age 35 or older, and most of the time when a player did accomplish this, they were likely the only player in the league to do it that season. Apart from a couple seasons in the early 2000s where Michael Jordan and the guy from Utah both did it in the same year. But around right here, something changed, and all of a sudden, we've gone from 2015, where it was just Kobe Bryant, to this season, where 5 different players are currently averaging 20 points at age 35 or older. And this doesn't even include some other players like Jimmy Butler, who's 35 years old, but is only averaging 18 points, or Damian Lillard, who's averaging 25 points, but won't turn 35 years old until after the season is over. Is this really just an anomaly? Or are NBA players actually becoming somewhat immune to aging? On November 15th, LeBron James made this pass to Austin Reeves, which would give him his 10th assist of the game, a triple-double, but it also meant that this was his 4th consecutive triple-double, making him the oldest player in NBA history to accomplish this, and making it the only time in his career where he's done this. Somehow, still setting records at 39 years old in his 22nd season. But this hasn't even been new. Over the last few seasons, we've had conversations about LeBron's production at an age that used to be the average retirement age for even a lot of great players, and it almost seemed like his prime was just simply never gonna end. But it was also understood that this was an anomaly that we had never seen before at this level, and likely would never see again. However, over the last few seasons, we've seen other players also joining LeBron in putting up this type of production at such an advanced age. I mentioned earlier that there are currently 5 players averaging 20 points at 35 or older. Those 5 players are LeBron James, Kevin Durant, Steph Curry, DeMar DeRozan, and James Harden, all of them being key players throughout the 2010s, with 6 MVPs, 8 rings, 5 finals MVPs, and 7 scoring titles between just these 5 players during that decade alone. DeMar, I didn't think you would be left out like this. But what is going on here? Why does it seem like players now are prolonging their careers so much more than generations past? A big part of it is obviously the advancement in our understanding of things relating to training and diet and things like that. I'm sure most of us know by now that LeBron spends X amount of money every year on making sure that his body is right. And so that is part of the reason. Another part of it is the advancement in medicine. There are stars in the NBA right now who likely would have had their careers either ended or significantly altered by the injury they had previously suffered. Zach LaVine's career after his ACL tear has been infinitely better than his career before. Kevin Durant is still one of the most unstoppable players in the NBA at 36 years old, despite tearing his Achilles at age 30. Klay Thompson tore his ACL and Achilles back to back, then contributed to a title run, and then went on to have arguably the best season of his career in 2023. It's just different expectations for players that are coming back from these types of injuries now. But another big factor, and one of the biggest, has been the changes that we've seen in the NBA over the last decade or so. More specifically, the amount of load managing that we've been seeing, especially for star players. You see, as NBA offenses have shifted, that's meant a bigger emphasis on shooting. And typically speaking, shooters usually have the longest careers out of anyone in the sport. If we take a look at the top 10 retired players for three-pointers made, and then look at the age when they all retired, we can see this correlation. Of course, players that play that long in the NBA are bound to be towards the top of lists like this, but my point still stands. Shooters generally have longer careers than players that rely on their athleticism, and we've known this for a while. But with the move towards the pace and space play style that we see today, it means a lot more transition plays and a lot more running. And typically, sports with more running and explosive speed and athleticism tend to have lower retirement ages just due to the strain that it puts on your body. It's the reason why we've seen such a noticeable difference in the amount of minutes that NBA players are playing today. You can go to any game from 15 seasons ago and find a stat sheet of stars playing well over 40 minutes in a regular season game. This game between the Lakers and the Hornets in January of 2009 perfectly encapsulates that. Kobe Bryant, Pau Gasol, and Derek Fisher all played 42 minutes in a non-overtime regular season game in January. And on the other side, David West also played 42 minutes and Chris Paul played 44. Again, no overtimes. But again, as the NBA has shifted, so has the strategy in keeping these guys as healthy as possible. A lot of players in the league actually want to play as many games as possible, but are being advised against it due to the sake of longevity. And so here we are, with guys playing less minutes per game and playing less games per season, but for good reason. When we take a look at the overall production from the top 50 players on Basketball Reference's Hall of Fame index and single out the players that have already retired, their production in their 30s would look like this. Pretty good and to be expected. And when we take into account everything that I mentioned earlier that's contributing to the longevity of players today, we might expect a gradual or slight improvement in their overall performance throughout these ages. But instead, this is actually what it looks like. And so, why do I say all this? Why am I just yapping? Well, I was thinking about this the other day. As the 2010s came to an end, fans and probably the league as well were fully expecting the next generation of NBA players to start taking over and making their mark on the league, and in a way replace the void that would inevitably be left by the older legends and elite players as they aged, which has been the case with every generation of players throughout history. But right now, we're seeing something very different, because we're at the point where 10 years ago, we probably would have said that guys like LeBron or KD or Steph would be on their way out of the league by now, and we would be getting ready for the younger generation to start dominating. At this moment, 10 years ago, LeBron was about to turn 30, and Steph was on his way to winning his first MVP. 10 years is a really long time, especially in sports. They weren't supposed to still be this good, but clearly everything we knew was a lie. Rather than a passing of the torch, they're just carrying the torch together. And for the players that I named and a handful of others around the league, it doesn't look like that will be changing anytime soon. Right now, the OKC Thunder and the Golden State Warriors are battling for the top spot in the Western Conference, aka the second youngest team in the league, led by a 26-year-old Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, a 23-year-old Jalen Williams, and a 22-year-old Chet Holmgren, versus the third oldest team in the league, led by a soon-to-be 37-year-old Stephen Curry and a 34-year-old Draymond Green. And this is a pattern that we're seeing throughout the league. Before Kevin Durant's injury, the Phoenix Suns were also in that race for the 1 seed, and KD is still leading the team in points per game at 36 years old. The Phoenix Suns, by the way, the second oldest team in the league. But even going beyond the biggest stars, there are also a lot of role players and just other stars that we aren't used to seeing their type of production from at their age. Al Horford and Drew Holiday still being defensive anchors and great offensive players for a Celtics team that isn't going anywhere anytime soon. Draymond Green still being a defensive player of the year caliber guy who, if he were to win that award this season, it would make him the oldest player in NBA history to win it, beating out the current record of 34 years old when Dikembe Mutombo won it in 2001, and making him the oldest winner since Marcus Camby won it in 2007 at age 32. You have 31-year-old Norman Powell becoming a frontrunner for most improved player, fueled by his pure hatred of Paul George, which has led him to averaging 9.5 more points than he did last season, and a bunch of other guys that I'm not even gonna bother going into detail for. The point where a lot of these guys should have been taking a back seat or just out of the league is here, or at least so we thought, but it just doesn't seem like they care. It's honestly one of the more interesting developments of the last few seasons for me specifically, but it's also one that I don't really think has any downside, because we still get to watch some of the guys that we grew up with playing at an elite level. It's not like they're just rotting away their last few seasons on a team that isn't going anywhere. A lot of the guys that I named are still competing for something, and we're seeing this while also seeing the younger players blossoming in front of our eyes. But it does make me wonder how many more seasons seasons a lot of these players in the next generation will be playing. Guys like Luka Doncic, Shea, Tatum, Brunson, Ant, D. Mitch, and so on. Will there ever be a point where we are once again revisiting this conversation down the line with them? Or is this really just an anomaly for these guys specifically? I'm interested to know what you guys think. No particular reason for this video other than the fact that I just personally thought this was a really interesting conversation to have. But with all that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Subscribe if you're new, hit the bell to be notified when I upload, comment down below what you want to see next, and as always, I'll see you guys in the next one.